Hi, welcome to the AAPI Voice, a program that promotes Asian American Pacific Islanders in participation and engagement. We are honored to have Senior Vice President of GM and President of GM International, Shilpan Amin, join us today. With me here also my co-host, Grace Lee.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations, Shilpan, on your appointment as GM's Senior Vice President and President of General Motors International. Can you tell us a little bit more about your responsibilities?
Yes, and first of all, thank you for having me here today. It's great to be able to talk to the community about the opportunities that have been provided and what it means to me. In my current role, I'm responsible for all the markets, all the GM international markets outside of North America and China. So it's about 64 markets that we represent, and it's a very diverse community and cultures and product line that we supply to all these markets.
That's lots of responsibilities. Can you share your background with our audience? For example, when did your family move to the United States? And how was your childhood? And where did you go to college? And what was your first job at GM?
So I'm a son of two Indian immigrants. So my father came over from India, truly the American story with no money. Came here for an education and ended up getting a job at Ford Motor Company, and then went back and had an arranged marriage with my mother, and eventually brought my mother here. They were the first of both their families to come here, and then brought the rest of their family over and supported and sponsored them to have the same opportunities here in the United States. For me, I grew up in a household with many people in it all the time as the family members were coming over. And then even after they went into their own housing, we were a very tight-knit family. And that really represents who I've become over my career and my approach to the business, really realizing that working together as a family, we can get a lot accomplished. My education is with Michigan State University. I did a bachelor's in mechanical engineering before I started General Motors. And my first job at General Motors was actually in the advanced product group and steering systems up in Saginaw. And then I progressed through steering systems into steering column engineering. And while I was doing that, I actually pursued a master's degree in engineering through Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute that GM had a sponsor with to do an education while working, our technical education program, which gave me a great opportunity to continue to learn and continue to contribute back to the company. As I was progressing, I went into the interior space, worked on many programs on the interior side, including the Hummer H3, the mid-sized truck, Colorado and Canyon, as well as the Saturn Vue as we were launching the brand new Saturn Vue. And so it was a great opportunity to learn along the way and develop into other parts of the business. I went and did an MBA at University of Southern California. I actually did that live, took time to do it full time just because I really was interested in the business side of learning and wanted to make sure I was fully ingrained into that learning experience. Upon which I did return to General Motors. And so I spent about the first 12 years of my career in engineering between chassis engineering and interior engineering. Went over to global purchasing and supply chain, spent the next 10 years of my career in global purchasing and supply chain, starting in interiors, and then I had strategic planning, and then I went into program management. Then I actually jumped back to the engineering team in global propulsion systems to do vehicle integration and operations from a propulsion engineering standpoint. And then I actually jumped back to global purchasing and supply chain. I was the vice president for global purchasing and supply chain before I took this role as president of GM International.
Well, thank you for sharing with your backgrounds and very diverse and rich careers. There are so many questions we would like to ask you. So let's start from your childhood and then move to the current. In your blog on the Asian Pacific American Chamber of Commerce newsletter last May, which titled From Embarrassment to Avoidance to Acceptance and Inclusion, you talk about your childhood, your struggles between different cultures and languages, which resonate a lot with us, especially for second generations of immigrants. By the way, for our audience, I strongly encourage you, if you have not read the blog, look it up on APEC's website and read it. So can you go through the challenges, the journey, and the acceptance process with us?
You know, when I reflect back on it now, I didn't realize what I was going through, you know, along my path as I was growing up. You know, when my parents came over and when I was born, there were not many Asians in the community other than the families that we were bringing over. There wasn't access to even Asian foods in the community. And you know, when I was going through my education, my parents put me into a private Catholic school. And so being Asian Hindu into a private Catholic school where, again, when I look around me, not many Asians in that program, let alone then a religion difference that applied in that program. You know, I was lucky enough to have people that took me under their wings along their way, including some of the professors at the school and, you know, families that really made me feel welcomed and part of their family along the way. And because I had that community where I knew where I could connect with, I also avoided those areas where, you know, there was always people that weren't familiar with what the culture was, would confuse me with American Indians, have the prejudices around, you know, do I just eat curry and all these things and name calling that would come along with it. And so I would avoid a lot of those situations and really know who a true family was between the friends and their families and the school community that, you know, really didn't see me any different. They valued my friendship. They valued, you know, engaging with me and making me part of their friends network. So when I think about it now on what it took for them to include me under their wings and support me along the way and making me not realize I'm different, you know, I really respect and appreciate the fact that they've done that along the way. And now when I think back at it, I really understand what inclusion means, what it looks like, and what it doesn't look like when it's not done well.
Look at your career path. You started at GM in 1996 as a product engineer, but you moved more toward the operation and management side. I have two parts of questions on this. First, you know, actually not as many people know that many Asians are good technically, but it's difficult for them to transition to be good managers. Can you share with us your challenges and mostly important advice for people?
Yeah, you know, when I was growing up, you know, my parents raised me with the assumption, as I think many people would probably understand that they wanted me to be a doctor or an engineer. And, those were kind of the targets as you were going through your education. My sister ended up being a doctor, and so she fulfilled that part of, the wishes of the parents. And I ended up being an engineer. But I would be, what I reference, a left-handed engineer. So I am left-handed, enjoyed kind of the creative part of it, and always curious around seeking what makes things work beyond the technical side of engineering. And as I was going through my career progression, part of what helped me along was having a strong network and mentor group that would advise me. And to be honest, they pushed me beyond what I knew I was capable of doing to try new things. Even, when I went from steering systems to the vehicle systems engineering responsibility for interiors. And at the time I had no idea what plastics were. I, came to realize what our design studio and customer facing products were, and all these other things where I didn't have the experience. And if I would have just looked at my past and what my experiences were, it wouldn't have let me conclude I could be successful in this new role. What gave me the confidence was a mentor that told me he believes I've got skills beyond what I think I'm capable of doing. And you've got to go demonstrate that. And if you fail, that's okay. We're here to help teach you and guide you and grow you in your career progression. It's not about one role. It's really about building this foundation to enable you to be successful over an entire career. And that really stuck with me. And I took that leap of faith to try new things. And the same thing actually happened as I transitioned into the global purchasing and supply chain role. In fact, I said no to that role twice, and really enjoyed my engineering progression. I did get interested in the business side of the business, and also with the global part of how we were operating, which at the time, interfacing with the suppliers and this global purchasing element was very intriguing. But again, I thought I wanted to be an engineer and stay in that engineering space. And then what another mentor mentioned to me is they wanted me to just meet a leader in the global purchasing and supply chain organization. And I met this person. And within the first 5 minutes of meeting this person, I knew I wanted to go work for her. She was very inspiring and motivating, and she had this vision, and she connected into what skills I could bring to the table and where it adds value to the purchasing and supply chain organization, as well as what I could learn from that organization. And when she helped make those connections, what I really recognized, it wasn't about what function you're in, it's really about leadership. It's about creating environments where people can pull out their strengths and really find fulfillment in connecting your strengths back to the company, as well as learning from the company what you could accomplish. So I'm a big advocate for having the right networks and mentors and reaching out and trying new things and go beyond what you think you're capable of doing.
I think you are the exceptional for Asian Americans, from an engineer to a senior vice president, as one of the most influential companies, all right? So there is an article in Harvard Business Review in May 2018 that shows Asian Americans are the least likely group in the US to be promoted. What do you think we can do to improve that trend?
Yeah, so I think if we would follow the traditional way decisions are made, and so you think about an opportunity that may open up in an area that you do not have experience in, you would just traditionally think about, well, I've got to have X amount of years of experience growing up in a group to be able to be considered for larger aspects of the group, or I've got to have certain education to be considered for different roles. When you think about it from a skill set basis and what value you can bring to the team from unique skill sets, experiences, perspectives to help connect that team stronger to the rest of the organization, as well as, empower the team that's there. Because what we've got to remember in many of these roles, the other network that's established within those groups are usually strong and capable and needs to be empowered and unleash that opportunity. And so when you look at yourself as a differentiator from a skill set basis, I think it opens your eyes to go pursue these opportunities. It opens the ability to tell that story for consideration in these roles. And what we have to do more of is go after those opportunities, go try these new things, because you don't know where you're going to be successful, but more importantly, you will inspire others to do so. And we've got to accelerate the skill-based development of a diverse community so they can have the opportunities to make a difference at all levels in an organization.
My next question is, your father was a Ford engineer, but later on, he decided to be an entrepreneur. And I'm sure the transition was not easy for the families. And so you witnessed the firsthand the AAPI business owners' struggles in the US. And on the other hand, before you were promoted to the senior president of GM, you were the vice president of GM Global Purchasing. And you are currently serving as the vice chair for Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council. So you have seen both sides. So what advice can you give it to the AAPI business owners who are trying to achieve their American dreams? And what can we do to help them to be more successful?
Yeah, one thing that my parents taught me was you should never stop learning. Education's the most important foundation, and education doesn't mean just going to university or pursuing a degree. It's in every opportunity you have, it's to learn. And, my dad started bought a business, his first business, and he was reading books on accounting and finance, and because he was a chemical engineer, and so he didn't understand the business side of it. And then, use his network to help him learn along the way. That alone wouldn't have driven stability or success for the family to do much better than we would have in the past. And so, one thing that he recognized is things will not be handed to you. You've got to not only work hard, but you've got to think differently. And really, one of the triggers, an example that he used was at the time, Ford Motor Company went from formal suits to work every day to business casual. And he was talking to one of the dry cleaners in the area, and this dry cleaners actually just put in high volume equipment, had a great facility, was planning to grow. And because Ford, they were in Dearborn, so right down the street from Ford headquarters, the majority of their business was Ford employees that were bringing their suits either before or after work and then get it in it dry cleaned. And when the suits are gone, the business went away, and he just made this investment. And he was talking to someone else, one of his ended up being his business partners. And what they realized is there were many dry cleaners around that area that were facing the same thing. And what they decided was, how do we reset that business? And all these businesses would have gone bankrupt individually, but how do we make those connections? And they established a hub and spoke. So the facility that just put in new equipment, let's run it all there. Let's buy some vans and move clothes back and forth to the other locations. The other locations we will shrink, not pay as much real estate cost, and make it more storefronts. And so you kind of have the volume and the storefront concept. And way before kind of the hub and spoke concept actually started taking off. And what they realized is they can bring their strengths to the table to think differently and apply it to differentiate themselves as a business and be successful. Nothing was going to be handed to them. Trying to do the same thing everyone else would have done would have led it into what those dry cleaners were going to face, which might have been closing down because the volume wasn't there. So I encourage everyone, and that's one of the things as we do our supplier development with our diverse supply base, we approach it from a learning aspect of how do we teach, how do we learn, how do we help understand core capabilities and apply it to differentiating your business so then you can really stand out. Because, and I'll openly tell a lot of the suppliers, I would get a lot of suppliers in the diverse space that were plastic injection molding suppliers. And I didn't need more plastic injection moldings. I had great ones. In fact, one of our largest ones is a diverse supplier. And so, I don't need to add more. So what do you do differently? And I think some of the opportunities that are in front of us, especially when we think about sustainability and net zero carbon footprints and process and materials, those are some opportunities, doors that open up to help differentiate yourself, to go in and create solutions for your customers that you're adding more value to give you an opportunity to grow your business. And so you've got to understand where those dynamics exist, and you have to then go pursue it and really set yourself apart.
You talked about the diversity and inclusion earlier. I know you are head of the GM Affinity Group, which helps employees with a different ethnic backgrounds have voices in the company. Can you tell us more about this program, especially during the past 2 years with anti-Asian hate surging? What have this group done, and how has GM helped the AAPI group navigate through this challenging time?
Yeah, and it's a great group. It's our employee resource group. And we actually just formed a couple of years ago into what we call General Motors Asian Connections. Before that, we were actually fragmented into different ethnicities. So we had an Indian group, and we had a Chinese group, and we had a Korean group, and we had, and we were too small to make a difference. And what we realized is we were all trying to do the same thing, which is making inclusion a big part of how we work and where we engage, learn about how we can grow our capabilities and have more confidence in pursuing opportunities, and really connect both the education and teaching part of building culture and diversity into, and scaling that up into something bigger we could accomplish when we're all working on it together. So part of that was bringing together all these groups under one employee resource group called Asian Connections to work together and demonstrate our capabilities to make a change. And what actually it demonstrates is we value each other's cultures and differences, and we're learning about each other as much as we're contributing and teaching the community about what an Asian culture looks like, and how do we learn and grow from there. The other part we did was create a board of directors under this employee resource group. And one of the things I mentioned was we've got to lead by example. There shouldn't be a board comprised of Asian, just the Asian community. We've got to engage and show this is about value and different perspectives and experiences. And when it comes together, you could deliver on great things. And so we created this board that's very diverse across ethnicities, across gender, across levels, across many parts of the business. And that really has enabled us to accelerate what this team is doing in the past couple of years, not knowing we were going to face such difficult dynamics in the Asian community, and not only contribute to both the education and teaching part of it, the support networks behind it, but then really making a difference in the communities we're at. In fact, just yesterday, a big portion of the group went out to the Pontiac school districts, and they were teaching the children of the Pontiac elementary schools about what an Asian community looks like and how it might be different, and questions they may have, and just having a conversation to help bring light to, there are differences, and it's okay to have a conversation, and the value that this diversity brings.
GM has always been a leader in the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm a strong believer that for a company to be successful, in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, it has to be lead from the top. It's more effective that way. I was struck by GM CEO and President Mary Barra's recent commencement speech at the Duke University. She said there are 5 most important things in life, which we can just learn from the family kitchen table. They are: do your best, find your purpose, listen to understand, be honest always, and including one more. I think that last one, including one more, really speaks volume on GM's leadership in the diversity, equity, inclusion. So can you share with us what other initiative on the DE&I GM has or planning helping the AAPI communities?
Yeah, I think, her commencement speech was very inspiring to hear the concept of, one extra seat at the kitchen table, to have it open and available for anyone to come into, really demonstrates how it takes both aspects to value having someone there and sharing their perspectives, as well as the inviting part of making sure others are included. And, that's one thing as we think about building teams and making decisions and recognizing, there might be the quietest voice in the room that has the most important insights or perspectives, and you've got to be able to make it an environment where people are willing to share and contribute to help guide us, and we'll become stronger. We'll have better business decisions. We'll have a better engagement to the team. And, there's just a lot of value in that inclusion. And if you don't invite that one last person in, you'll miss this huge opportunity. So recently I joined General Motors Inclusion Advisory Board, which is an internal board with external members to advise our CEO and our senior leadership team around how, as a community, can we make the most impact to help become the most inclusive company in the world. And this focus has really helped us drive us into direct work streams that we can contribute to. What we recognize is we can't do it all. And so we've got to see, where can we have the most impact? How do we drive momentum? How do we drive education? And how do we contribute both externally and internally on our journey to be the most inclusive company? We're learning as we go, and we're also contributing back into the communities. And, when I think about the work that we've done with the Asian communities, especially in the past couple of years, the continued investments into, building our Asian suppliers, our Asian dealers, and what we're learning about how to be engaging with all ethnicities and genders, and understanding, these common effects of what we're trying to accomplish, and bringing it together so we can both learn and we can educate along the way. So there's a lot more to come. I'm super excited about all the work that we're doing in our Inclusion Advisory Board as we pursue becoming the world's most inclusive company.
Thank you so much, Shilpan and GM leadership, for setting a great example. Finally, do you have any words of encouragement for our community on how to navigate this challenging time?
One thing I would say is understand and build upon your strengths. And it's not the strengths that you may define for yourself, but recognize everyone comes from individual experiences and backgrounds. And throughout your continued growth, both in education and your job environment and your family engagement and your work engagement, you are actually becoming even more experienced with unique perspectives that provide value into contributing to discussions. But all of that has no value if you're not willing to engage. So you've got to be willing to engage, whether it's a conversation. And I encourage you in the next meeting, speak an opinion you have, help connect the dots into insights you may have to why it might help make decisions forward, and see how it's valued. And might not always lead to your recommendation, but knowing that your voice is heard not only helps drive a decision that incorporates your perspective, but it inspires those around you that are listening and watching, and they're all waiting for someone to really stand out. So it gives them the right to stand out. And it takes a change agent, it takes a leader, it takes someone willing to contribute. And when you do so, it helps the entire society collectively as we learn how to become more inclusive in everything we do. We learn how to be more inviting, and we learn how to help educate the community better. And I wrote that sheet that Grace mentioned last year. It's been amazing the number of responses I've received and how it's just opened the doors for people to engage. In fact, and not just at work. I had one story that someone told me that an Asian family moved in down the street, and because they didn't know how to engage with this Asian family, and they didn't know, would it be disrespectful if they invited them to dinner and they hadn't eaten, or when they come to the house, are they allowed to come in? Do they take their shoes off? What it means. And because they feared that, they didn't engage. And when they saw that, the support that comes and the appreciation that comes when someone's willing to engage and take you under their wing, as I've experienced throughout my growth, they talked about how they went across the street and they had a conversation with their neighbor that's been there for 5 years. And now, it's like this open friendship, and they've made these connections that they would have never made because they just didn't know how. That's part of this learning and educating, and this assumption that everyone wants to do what's right. We just have to help connect the dots to help society move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for a very insightful and very enlightening, inspiring discussion. Thank you, Shilpan. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Shilpan, for taking the time to be with us today. I want to thank to our viewers. Please subscribe to Dragon Eagle TV, and I will see you in next episode of AAPI Voice.
Thank you for having me.
When it comes to the high-quality production of metal parts with complex shapes, such as valve bodies, housings, and rotating bodies, an important goal of the deburring process is to clean and eliminate various types of burrs, in particular, tough internal burrs. This persists as a major challenge in deburring technologies today. Promax's innovative abrasive bead deburring machine provides an automatic, highly efficient, and cost-effective solution for deburring, cleaning, and polishing both internal and external surfaces of these complex parts, including ones with multiple holes and grooves. The surface of the medium and parts is ground under the set working condition to remove cross holes and other internal and external burrs, finally forming a smooth edge. The abrasives have distinct effects on different surfaces. For instance, they impose enough force to effectively remove burrs, bumps, and other defects on rough surfaces, yet they are gentle enough on smooth surfaces and holes to avoid noticeable variations in product dimensions and quality. Regardless of the complexity of the parts, Promax abrasive bead deburring machines can effectively and simultaneously remove internal and external burrs to create safe and healthy working conditions and achieve sustainable manufacturing. All Promax deburring machine models adopt physical deburring mechanisms. Through comprehensive mechanical and electrical designs, Promax produces robust and reliable deburring machines that are easy to maintain and friendly to the environment.